Ashley. Hello, Jalen.
Hi, mister.
Hi.
Hi, Mister.
Is it still morning? No, it's not morning. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Michael Torres. I'm still getting used to this bell schedule. Ian, good morning or good afternoon. Ah,
Good afternoon.
hey. Hello, Barama. Hey, Fruzbek got his test kit. Mazel tov. That's wonderful news. Now we can celebrate after you find out that you have no lead in your water as well. We'll have an additional celebration. Hello, Stephanie. Ah. All right, people, this is our agenda for the day. Always like to give you a heads up in terms of what we are going to accomplish together. Hello, Elizabeth. So if you haven't already done so, please navigate over to Google Classroom and open the PDF that I shared with you. Um, there's, hello, Leslie. You have two links. One is to a website, and one is to a document. It's just a PDF file. So open up the PDF file. And there you will see New York's voter registration form. And so I'm going to give you a few minutes just to look at that, read over it, identify some surprising information in the form, and any questions that you might have. Speaking of questions, let me make sure my chat box is open. All right, so it just looks like hellos for now. That's good. And Farouz Beck's excitement over the fact that he got his lead kit. With a smiley face with sunglasses. So how about I'll pull that up too. Get a chance to look at our agenda. So this is the form that I wanted you to open up. And again, if you go into Google Classroom, yours should look like this. And then first thing in classwork, pre-register to vote. There's two links. Click this one. See? The PDF form. Did you hear how a Russian journalist set herself on fire? I didn't hear that. I've heard of that practice before. Does anybody know the term for that? There's actually a specific term for lighting yourself on fire. No one knows. It's Russia. So this is a thing that's been done historically as a form of protest. There's very famous pictures that come out of the Vietnam War, where people were lighting themselves on fire. Um, in China as well. I was actually traveling in Japan when someone had set themselves on fire as themselves. Yeah, self-immolation. That's the term. hmm But I did not hear that for respect. So thank you for sharing that. Well, I mean, it's definitely a form of suicide, right? You are killing yourself, but it's typically connected to political protest. So again, you should be looking at our New York State voter registration form. There's a front and a back. Make sure to look at both of them. If there's something that stands out to you that you find surprising, put it into the chat. If you have a question about anything that you see, put it into the chat. So you have about 1 more minute. That's a good observation, Jalen. Yeah, right? Who knew? Look at all these political parties. We don't hear about all of them, that's for sure. They're definitely not all winning office and winning elections, that's for sure. Conservative is its own party. Mm-hmm. Who knew, right? But liberal isn't. Well, there's another. Which parties do you think have a liberal slant to them besides the Democratic Party? Any predictions? Which of these parties might? The Green Party, the Reform Party, very good. Any other ones? I think maybe the Women's Equality Party and the Working Families Party. There was actually, if you look in the news, in a lot of like local New York news, there's actually concern that the Working Families Party, they might not actually appear on the ballot anymore because they don't have enough people that have registered to be a part of this party. And so they're in jeopardy of like losing their place even on this voter registration form. So that's one thing that actually separates our form of democracy apart from many other forms. Like in Britain, they're a democracy, but they are a parliamentary democracy, and they have many parties, and many of these parties have some seats in government. They have some representation, but in America, and you'll see like as we talk more about um, the electoral college and the electoral system, why we have a two-party system and the ramifications where we do have all these small parties, but they don't have really any say and very little power in our government. And they drive on the other side of the road. Indeed. Okay. So we're going to come back to this form momentarily. We're just going to do a few more things beforehand. So first off, how's everyone feeling? It's Monday, I know, but maybe it's not getting you down. Maybe you got energy. Maybe you feel pleasant. I don't know. Leslie feels pleasant. Yocheved's stressed out. You're in the red. Well, ooh, yeah. Well, that's high in energy. At least red has energy attached to it. Stressed and calm. Drained, happy. I think I've gone with this each period. I feel a little less so, maybe because it's the end of the day. But I'm gonna go with jittery. I'm feeling jittery. Oh, stay away from Anthony. I think he's unhappy. A couple people also, I think, are experiencing that emotion. Do you guys know why I'm feeling jittery? I think I've shared this with you. It's worth mentioning it again. It has nothing to do with the tea. Tell me, Anthony, why am I feeling so jittery? Uh-huh, she's coming. Yeah. So my wife is due on Friday. That's her due date. But I'm telling you, when my first daughter was born, she was born in during, well, no, but my wife called me in first period and told me that they were admitting her to the hospital and I needed to get my butt to the hospital as quickly as possible. And so this week, especially, like when I was in sitting in first period, I'm like, all right, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that phone call. If my phone rings and it's my wife, I know that she's in labor because she'll just send me. She doesn't like calling me on the phone. She likes sending me text messages. I think the only time that she ever called me while I was at school was when they were admitting her to the hospital. We'll see. If I don't see you, if you don't see my beautiful face tomorrow or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, um, you know I'm with my wife and she's giving birth. And then I look forward to having a conversation with all of you afterwards where I could like Simba my new daughter and show her to you. So I'm glad that you're happy. I'm happy too. I am jittery and nervous, but also happy. So I share this to you because I share this for two reasons. I want to share the good news with you. I want to celebrate with you after she's born, but I also want to prepare you. Thank you so much, Frizbek. I want to prepare you for the fact that I am going to. There will be a period of time after the birth of my daughter where I won't be meeting with you daily like this. I will be available. I will continue to guide your learning, but I will have some time with my family, and I'll have some time uh, to be on paternity leave. Thank you for. I'm glad that you understand. All right, all right. That means so much to me. Thank you for your well wishes. And let's talk about this. Look at this same picture, except this guy. Who do you think this is? I wonder who this is. And I wonder what the name of this vehicle is. Does Trump's car have a name? Like, we know Air Force One, right? But, like, what is the name of his vehicle? Anyway, same picture, same story, much different slant to it. I don't know what the car brand is either. I know this is like crazy bulletproof glass, but I don't know who makes these cars. Feruzbek thinks it's a Chevy. Beats me. Perhaps you would know better than I do. I know very little about cars. A Cadillac? Those are classic. So, this is one story, this is another story. Which do you think is from the conservative paper and which do you think is from the liberal paper? The blue one's all positive. The black mentions alarming episodes. The one on the right is liberal. Elizabeth agrees with Yo-Yo. I guess that's Yocheved. I guess Yocheved's nickname is Yo-Yo. Makes a lot of sense. Because I see Fox uses those bullet points. Yup. Yup, the little lines. Boop, 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 boop. Maybe it's centrist, the one on the right? What makes you think that, Fruzbeck? You know what? I haven't actually done that. Whenever I throw two stories up here, usually one is liberal, one's conservative. So it seems like you guys are on point, right? This is the liberal story. That's from the Times. This one on the left is from Fox News. This is the conservative story. And let's see, I know we had some thoughts in terms of what we saw as differences. I love how the blue one is all positive, right? Like, so what do we see here that is perhaps optimistic? President may be discharged from hospital, right? Or, oh, Trump on the mend? Is he all mended? Maybe he's all better. Maybe he's all better. Or like President Trump could return to WH as early as tomorrow, right? But Mark Meadows, he ain't doing so good. So this is like very optimistic, right? If you're a conservative, you want to hear that Trump is getting better. That's what you want to hear, and that's what they're telling you. As opposed to if you're a liberal, I'm not saying that you have hate in your heart for the president, but perhaps you're more inclined to think that he's going to take a turn for the worse. Is that evil? So this does not have the same optimistic tone. Alarming episodes. That sounds serious. Doctors reveal that the president's oxygen level dropped twice. He's on steroids. That sounds serious. So, what do we believe? Is Trump on the mend, or is he just like moments away from being put on a ventilator? Who knows? But we will continue to follow this story. So hopefully I got all of you excited about registering to vote. I hope so. I hope I at least didn't turn anybody off from registering to vote. So let's turn our attention to New York's voter registration form. It's interesting how it says New York, right? Maybe that stands out to you because you think like, hey, presidential elections, those are national elections. Why doesn't it say US voter registration form? Well, elections take place on a state by state basis, and states determine election laws. And there's differences in small differences about who's eligible to vote and procedures for voting from state to state. So like, it's strange to think like you could be eligible to vote in one state and not eligible to vote in another state. And that might not have to do with where you live. Like if you move to another state, based upon something in your past, you might not be able to vote. So Bahram is asking me for an example. That makes perfect sense. So let's talk about that. First off, when you take a look at the form, especially the top of the form, who's eligible to vote in the United States? What are the qualifications to vote? You have to be a citizen, specifically as a citizen of the United States of America. You have to be 18 or older, true. Is there anything else? You can't be in prison. Where do you see that, Stephanie? No record. Anthony, where do you see that? Right over here. So on New York State's form, it says, not be in prison or on parole or a felony conviction. Did you guys know that? Do you know in certain states, if you have a criminal record, you lose your right to vote for life, for the rest of your life? You think that's good, Anthony? Why? Tell me more. They're criminals. Do you think the criminal justice system is fair? Yeah, but who goes to jail and who doesn't go to jail? Is that fair? Well, some of you seem to have very strong opinions on this. And when I looked at your news story from the summer, especially how many focused on issues of like criminal justice, Breonna Taylor, I think this is something that will resonate with you. But I want you to understand the origins of this practice of not letting people accused of crimes vote. It has a long, long history in the United States. And we're going to go into that. Does anybody know when this practice first started? Not letting criminals vote? It's connected to probably the most important event in our nation's history. Do you know what like the most important event in our nation's history is in connection to like basic rights and freedoms? Close, Brahma. It's related to that. True. Yeah. So a lot changed in 1865. That was the end of the Civil War. That's when many blacks became free men. So the end of slavery and then equal rights and then like protecting the right to vote. Let me show you a few things. This is a map of felony disenfranchisement. What do you think that means, disenfranchisement? Based upon what we've talked about so far, probably know what disenfranchisement means, just from context. This word is also going to appear on your vocab sheet that I'm going to give to you tomorrow. So disenfranchise means to lose your right to vote or not to have power, right? So felony disenfranchisement, this is a map of people that lose their right to vote because they have criminal records. I just was curious to see if you knew what that word meant, disenfranchisement. So that's like not having the right to vote. And you see in New York, that's just inmates and parolees. So if you serve your time, you get your right to vote back in New York. Not necessarily so in Florida. In Florida, ex-felons, you could have served your time, still don't have the right to vote. And this was recently ruled on in Florida. And it seemed like they were going to make changes to this because this bothered a lot of people, rightfully so. But still, in Florida, if you owe any legal fees, you don't get your right to vote back until you pay all your debts to the government. So this is something still in place. And I think Florida is so important because it's a swing state. So in Maine, prisoners can vote. Sure, yep. In these green states, no restrictions. You can vote from jail. From inside the prison. I don't know if they set that would be interesting. Do you vote in person? Do they set up voting booths or do you have to vote by absentee ballot? That's a great question. Which state has the most electoral votes? Do you know what state has the highest population? Do you know what's the most populous state? Not New York. California. California, Texas, then New York. And I think New York has the same as Florida. We're going to be looking at that later this week. I'm going to show you a map of the Electoral College. Okay, so I said after the Civil War, we have the passage of 3 super important changes to the Constitution. The first is the 13th Amendment. And so it says, Section 1, 13th Amendment, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except for a punishment of a crime, whereas the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So what practice is ending with the 13th Amendment after the Civil War? Slave labor. But is there any caveats to this? Do you see any exceptions to this rule that there shall be no slavery? Most people don't think about this, and this isn't taught, except for punishment of a crime. So do you know that slavery is actually legal in the United States as long as you're a criminal? They snuck it in. Have you seen these? Or did you see on the news when Cuomo touted New York State Hand sanitizer? What's the deal with that? Who's making this stuff? Why is it so cheap? Prisoners. And prisoners aren't paid. Sometimes they are, like pennies per the hour, but they're not making minimum wage, that's for sure. So it's interesting to think about. That goes back to, again, the 13th Amendment. We think like, no, we don't have slavery. Well, except as a punishment for a crime. It says it right in the Constitution. Let's look at another thing. The 15th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States by or by any state on the account of race, color, previous conditions of servitude. No, the 3/5 compromise is not in effect anymore. That has been amended for respect. So if you look at a copy of the Constitution, it's crossed out now because that doesn't apply anymore. And again, that has to do with color, right? So what's a way to get around this? We can't discriminate. We can't prevent somebody from voting based upon their race, color. You should notice it doesn't say gender because women don't have the right to vote yet. Black men actually have the right to vote before white women. After the Civil War, if you're a man and you're black, you can vote. A white woman doesn't get the opportunity to vote until 1919 with the passage of the 19th Amendment. But if you want to take someone's right to vote away, you can't do it based upon their color. So what could you do? You begin this practice of felony disenfranchisement. So if you're black, I can't prevent you from voting. But if you're black, I can target you for arrest and you could be convicted, and then we can take your right to vote away. And that's kind of what's happening now. It's a way to circumvent the 15th Amendment. That's when felony disenfranchisement laws started. So they were put on the books by states after the Civil War as a way to circumvent the 15th Amendment. So what's the main idea of this chart? What is this telling you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What is this? What's the main idea here, Jalen? One in 13 black voters loses their right to vote because of felony disenfranchisement, as opposed to 1 in 56 non-black voters. Yes. And so if we have an unjust or a systemically racist criminal justice system, then this is going to disproportionately affect blacks. Race affects voting. Yes, it does. And so, again, if you look at the states, these states over here where you lose your right to vote for life, if you have a criminal record, these states are all Republican states. The states up here where you don't, or you do just if you're in jail, these are Democratic states. So politics have a lot to do with it as well. And a state like Florida, which is a swing state, is super, super important. And a law like this could determine the outcome of the election. So again, you might not necessarily, all these thoughts don't necessarily enter your head, but just one little line on our voter registration form saying that, you can only register if you're not in prison or not on parole. This has a long, deep, dark history. And we're going to see this time and time again in terms of small changes or small little subtext to voting law and the huge, huge effects that they have on our country. Now, is there anything else on this form that stands out to you? I know we talked a little bit about political parties. Do you have to join a political party? Yes or no? You don't, right? You can click no party. What's the benefit of joining a political party? What advantage or right do you have if you join a political party? Would that make you centrist? Um, Centrist is what's up here. It's like in your mind. So you can join one party or another and still like be centrist. Well, if you don't join one, the only thing that means is that you can't do. There's one thing that by joining a party that like you get it. There's a benefit to that. Actually, two things. So you can't run as a Democrat unless you join the Democratic Party. So that's one advantage. You can run for political office of that party if you join that party. And then there's another thing. So how did Biden become the Democratic nominee? How was that decided? Right? How did Trump become the Republican nominee? How did Biden become the Democratic nominee? Who made that choice? Both parties. How? How did they choose? So they had an election, right? Do you know what the name of that election is? Before like the presidential election, back in May, there was another election. Do you remember what that was called? Before the general election, there is a primary election. And in a primary election, you choose nominees. So remember, de Blasio was running for president. Bernie Sanders was running for president. This guy named Pete Buttigieg was running for president as a Democrat. Kamala Harris was running for president as a Democrat. Even Michael Bloomberg was running for president as a Democrat. Remember all those people? Now, the only way you get to choose which candidate you want is to be a member of that party. So, like, if you register for the Democratic Party, you get to choose which Democrat is going to register or going to represent the party. If you choose Republican Party, you're going to get to decide which Republican is going to represent the Republican Party. So you get to vote in the primary. That's the benefit of joining a political party. If you're a Democrat, if you're a registered Democrat, could you vote for Trump? On November 3rd, could you vote for Trump if you're a registered Democrat? Yeah, of course you can. Sure. That's what Trump wants. He needs to win over as many voters as possible. So you can vote for whoever you want come election day. Doesn't matter what party you belong to. But you can only vote in the primary and choose that candidate that's going to be nominated and represent the party unless you join the political party. Okay? So, you know what? Some people, you can join the Republican Party and try to vote Donald Trump out as the nominee. And then you can vote for a Democrat. in the presidential election. You could. So basically, joining the party means you get to help choose the nominee. That's the big deal. What if both Trump and Biden get into a fight? Are they disqualified? What do you mean? Like a physical fist fight? I think if getting into a fist fight doesn't disqualify you from running for president. I mean, if you're in jail, if you have a criminal record, maybe that could get in the way, right? If you're a felon, then maybe you can't. Could you run for office as a felon? That's a different law, you know? I think that there's laws too that prevent you from running for government, for elected office, if you have a felony record as well. What's on the back of this form? What's this? This. This is always on the back of voter registration forms, always. What happens if you fill this part out? Yeah, you can sign up to be an organ donor. They tack this on as a way to get more people to register to be an organ donor. They do it at the DMV as well. You can even register to vote at the DMV. They do that because they try to increase the number of people that are registered. Okay? So I am going to give you some time to register to vote or pre-register. Pre-register means New York City made a change. You can now register to vote if you're 16 or 17, as long as you're a US citizen. And so you can fill this form out now, and as soon as you turn 18, you can vote. You don't have to do it again. So if you want, you could, if you have a printer, you can print the form that I shared with you, or you can use this website, which makes it a lot easier. So do any of you have driver's licenses or like a permit, a learner's permit, or a New York State ID? Do any of you have New York State IDs? Because if you have any of those things, you could complete the form completely online. If you don't have any of those things, you can still fill out this form. I think with your social security number, you put your social security number in, but then what happens is they'll mail you something with all your information and you have to sign it. You sign your name and then send it back in. So it's up to you. So it's really easy to do. You don't need a printer. Just put in your information and then they'll send you a form in the mail with all your info in it. You have to sign it, mail it back, you're registered to vote. And they do this super quickly because they want to get people registered before the election. So even like the deadline to be registered to vote in November 3rd is Friday, and you can still complete this process before Friday. But again, only do this if you are a US citizen. Because if you read over here, like you have to swear, and it says, I understand that if this is not true, I can be convicted or fined up to $5,000 or jailed up to 4 years. If you are not a US citizen, you are not eligible to vote, and you can't fill this form out. Do you have to? This is a free country. There's very little that you have to do, and by no means am I forcing you to fill out this form. But if you're in this class, I would hope that you're passionate about participating in your government, and one of the best ways to do that is to vote. And so again, this is it's like a driver's license. You can register to vote just like you can get a driver's license and never drive a day in your life, but it gives you the option to. You don't have the option of driving a car without a driver's license, and you don't have the option of voting unless you register. So why not increase your options and register to vote? So I think that's my last pitch for you guys. And with that, you have about 6 more minutes. And so this form takes way less time than that. Does anybody have any other questions about voter registration? What that entails? What that looks like? I'm glad that we got some questions about the Electoral College. That's our map of the Electoral College. I can leave that up for you if you want to take a look at it. Perhaps this chart will motivate you too to register to vote.